for Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. This is dun, 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 the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show. So, always encouraging. This is, again, just sparking here, one individual, trying to get all of us to do a little bit better, please. I'm asking you as a friend, a neighbor, a fellow person on the planet. We need to try to work a little bit harder, and I'm not talking about 40 hours a week, but certainly a handful of hours a month. All of us need to dedicate some time to the critical issues in front of us and to better understand, some of these issues and each other, okay? And right now we have these political parties, and in the United States, there's just two of them. And because of the propaganda that the wealthy, influential people that run those political parties, use, they've been fairly good at segregating us into two tribes or even cults almost. Or maybe not almost, maybe we are cults, Democrat and Republican. And what is that doing? That's destroying one of the major fabrics of a democracy, which is, to share, to have enough respect for each other's views, to step away from this agonism word, which is the warrior stance, to step away from that and listen to each other. And I've said this, and I'll say this several more times as I finish out this series here. If you ask someone that you are struggling with, arguing with, okay, let's take a moment, walk me through, tell me about your walk in life that gets you to where you are on this position. Let me tell you about my walk in life. And you're going to find out that you're going to come to a much greater understanding of each other. And usually that means that you will be able to come to a position, not always, but usually, almost all the time, you'll be able to come to a position where both parties are kind of in at least an all right way. And that's exactly what this is. Okay, this government, the laws, they apply to all of us. We're stronger together. The United States of America has been this behemoth of technology and economic power and so on, and freedom and frankly, joy and lack of stress in many, many ways. I mean, we have enjoyed a kind of a tremendous run, but it's in trouble right now. And this is the reason why I'm doing the show and why I'm encouraging us to be better citizens and why I'm considering or encouraging us to get rid of the political parties and adopt what I and some dozens of my friends and neighbors have talked about, which is this whole citizen statesman concept, where we just have average citizens that take those positions in our great government structure that we have. So the structure is great. We don't need to do anything about that, but we need a constitutional amendment that's going to tell us how to take people like you and me and put us into that structure for a short period of time so that we can govern each other, people dedicated to serving the nation and the planet as opposed to self-service. So today's show is called Trumper Tantrums. Yeah, so last night they had the first presidential debate of the 2020 election, and it was, of course, Mr. Trump versus Mr. Biden on stage, and Mr. Chris Wallace, who is I think he's a news anchor and a news correspondent for Fox News, was the moderator. Well, and so first thing I want to say is I hope you watched. I hope everybody watched. And it was not an easy thing to watch. And, I was watching it, and quite honestly, quite frankly, I was wanting to turn it off at various times, because it wasn't any kind of serious debate. It was just mostly Mr. Trump ranting and raving, and basically throwing a temper tantrum or a Trumper tantrum. Someone else, some comedian somewhere, coined that phrase. That's not me. If I remembered who it was, I'd say who it was. But there was a comedian somewhere that coined the phrase Trumper tantrum, and that's basically, for 90 minutes he threw a Trumper tantrum. He railed on and on and on, and Mr. Wallace would say, please, Mr. President, please, sir, please, Mr. President, no, stop. It's Mr. Biden's turn. You agreed that you would each speak for 2 minutes uninterrupted, and on and on and on, and this just went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So if you didn't watch the debate, so that's what happened. Okay, that is the honest, non-partisan review of what happened. Is that Mr. Trump, and he said, so the one thing some people liked, because they interviewed some folks that had watched the thing, is, well, Mr. Trump's a very strong personality, and he was, yelling and screaming. But the problem is that this is a democracy, and we need to have this exchange of ideas, and to allow the voters to understand these are, unfortunately, we have these, two political parties, and these are the two candidates that are only, this is it. We have this choice. Just like back in 2016, we had Trump and Hillary Clinton. Now we got Trump and Biden. This is our choice. This is what we're allowing our democracy to devolve to, is having these political parties put up, a choice between two. And what will I say about the thing on the whole? Well, Mr. Trump was, obviously very temperamental, very argumentative, very bullheaded, I guess, and yelled and screamed and sometimes pretty without any kind of real direction in what he was saying. He just started rattling off this stuff, and unfortunately, if you fact check a fair amount of it, a lot of it was either gross misrepresentation or just flat out lies about various things. Mr. Biden, he did a good job for the most part in this environment. So the one positive I thought was that periodically he would just ignore the president, and the president would keep railing on or whatever, and Mr. Biden would just turn to the camera and literally, like I'm doing here, he would point at you, the people, and he would say, look, my fellow American people, this is what's important. I think this, we need to do this. He doesn't believe in any of this. I do. We working together, we can accomplish. We can, overcome this coronavirus together. We can do, with the things, and we can restore the economy. You and I, we can do this. Us together, we can do this. And because it was really the only way to try to allow himself some kind of channel to actually speak to the American people in this debate, where the other participant was just off the rails, just a continuous bullhorn of slurs and anger and malcontent and he didn't just rail against Mr. Biden. He railed against Mr. Wallace, and he railed against media and the audience. And so the final thing I will say about it is there's supposedly supposed to be 2 more debates, and I don't know how you could have 2 more debates unless the only way I could see that you could have the debates is if you got a couple of soundproof chambers and you put them on the stage, and you put Mr. Biden in one and you put Mr. Trump in the other, so they're soundproof. So it doesn't matter how much they yell and scream and stomp their feet and throw their temper tantrums, especially in the case of Mr. Trump. The audience can see him. They can see him stomping his feet and holding his breath, but at least with his microphone off, you can't hear him. And yes, it's still going to be a distraction, but at least, Mr. Biden, when it's his turn to talk, his microphone could be on and he could talk. And Mr. Trump cannot say anything. Well, he can say all he wants, but no one can hear it. And then when maybe they even have to have shades that blot out, because, maybe Mr. Trump would be jumping around and doing whatever to try to distract from what Mr. Biden is trying to say. I mean, God knows it was just a catastrophe in the first debate. And then so Mr. Trump would get his minutes, Mr. Biden would get his minutes, and then the 2 of them, you turn both microphones on, and yes, they maybe would yell and scream at each other for a couple minutes about whatever they said. I don't know. I mean, I think that, and I think there were some polls after the debate was over, and I want to say it was something like 70% of all Americans, Republicans and Democrats, all Americans, just thought that debate was a total and complete travesty. And I think the vast majority of them would point at Mr. Trump as being, the culprit behind having this failure in this opportunity. It's a failed opportunity for the American public and the world, frankly, to find out more about these 2 candidates that, potentially one or the other is going to be running this nation. One of the most, like it or not, the American this country, the United States of America, is one of the most important countries in the world. I'm not going to say the most important, but it's certainly one of the top 10, top 20 important countries in the world. And this was an opportunity for everyone outside the United States and inside the United States to see these candidates and understand them better, except for it was a total and complete failed opportunity because Mr. Wallace, there was no way of controlling Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trump was not going to be controlled, which again is one of the many reasons why, non-political, why Mr. Trump cannot be president of the United States. You need to be logical and reasoned and compassionate as the leader of the United States of America, and Mr. Trump he just doesn't have those attributes. They just don't exist in his soul. All right, so that's Trumper Tantrums. That's the review of the debate, and my name is Michael James, out for the Pro and Con Show. Until the next show, bye for now.